Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our virtual session all about research here at the University of Pittsburgh. We are so happy to have you all with us today, joining us virtually from all across the country and around the globe. We have some great students here with us today, and they are going to talk all about their involvement in research all across campus. And of course, we are here to answer your questions. So throughout the session today, please feel free to contact us either using the chat feature on YouTube. You can also text us questions through visit days. We have staff ready to answer your questions and make sure that we cover all the bases today during our session. So to get us started, we are going to meet our students, and we're going to hear a little bit more about them as far as what they're studying, where they are from, and of course, what their research experience, for a little bit of it, what it's been like here at Pitt. We'll get started with Erika.
Hi guys, so my name is Erika Fisher. I am a junior at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm currently in Edison, New Jersey, which is right smack in the middle of the state, so about 5.5, 6 hours away from campus, so I miss it a lot. Let's see, my major is legal studies, so I'm on the pre-law track. Some things I'm involved with on campus. I'm, of course, a Pathfinder, so I do all the student tours here. I am in 2 Greek organizations. So I'm in a sorority called Alpha Epsilon Phi. I'm also in a pre-law organization called Phi Alpha Delta, which is more on like the professional side. I'm also on the debate team. I'm involved in some of the Jewish organizations here. And yeah.
Fantastic. Up next, we have Natalie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Simmons. I am a senior at Pitt. My majors are politics and philosophy and gender, sexuality, women's studies, and I have a French minor. I am from about 30 minutes north of downtown Pittsburgh, so Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And a little bit about what I've been involved with on campus. I'm in a social sorority and a pre-law fraternity. I'm in a leadership organization called Omicron Delta Kappa. I've been in student government and a couple other organizations besides, of course, Pathfinders that we have here. So excited to answer some questions today.
Great. And next we have Vanshika.
Hi guys, my name is Vanshika Narala. I'm a sophomore at Pitt. I'm a neuroscience and psychology double major doing pre-med. Other than Pathfinders, a lot of the clubs that I'm involved in are cultural clubs and medical clubs like Hindu Student Council, Steel City Sapna, which is a dance competition club, and the AMSA, which is like the American Medical Student Association.
Great. And our final student today will be Roop.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roop. I'm a junior here at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm from Irvine, California, so all the way from across the country. Other than Pathfinders, I'm also involved in a social sorority called Alpha Epsilon Phi. I'm also in an honors fraternity called Gamma Sigma Alpha. And other than that, research is my main activity outside of my social sororities.
All right, well, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And we do have our first question that we're going to address, and that's going to be talking about research as an additional activity on top of degree requirements. So that's talking about, what is the structure of research like on campus? Is it a part of the degree, or is it something that you seek out on your own? We'll let a few of our students answer that.
I know for the neuroscience major, research is one of the capstone options. So you have to get a capstone, and to do it, you can either do research or you could write like a thesis, but most people tend to do research and write their theses on the research that they're conducting. So the neuroscience office works with students to find research that they're able to write their theses and papers on.
I had a similar experience with one of my majors. So because I had 2 majors, I would have had to do 2 capstones. So just a little bit about what a capstone is. It's usually what you pursue your junior or your senior year, sort of at the end of your degree requirements. And it's a smaller class setting, and it's usually with one of the lead professors of the department. And it's just a much closer look into a lot of the more quantitative parts of whatever that degree is. So because I had two majors, it was actually really helpful that my major let me do research as one of my capstones. That way I could, do research outside of taking a particular class. So that freed up a couple credits for me. And I actually was able to do one of my capstones my junior year, and then I got to do my other capstone my senior year. So for a lot of different departments, I know, like she said, neuroscience, but then also I'm in the honors college, so that worked out for me as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk a little bit about the thesis research. So I also am involved in the neuroscience research. For me, it was really great. I actually went into my counselor and I asked my counselor, or my advisor, sorry, for advice on how to, get involved in research. And she gave me a great option. She said, to go onto the department page and ask or read through all the different professors that were under the department page and kind of read through what their research was, and then email them and see, if I can get involved that way. I ended up emailing maybe 2 or 3 different research professors, and I ended up getting involved right away through that way. And I've been involved with it for about 1.5 years, and I'm actually about to begin my thesis research. Since obviously I'm not on campus right now, I'm actually starting off with my introduction section of the research section this summer. So it's kind of variable, obviously, with the amount of time that you decide to do research. That's all on you. And you don't have to do thesis research along with doing your research as well. That's just, your option. Obviously, within each major, there are different requirements for what your writing needs to be. And, if you choose to do it through your thesis, feel free to do it that way. That's all I had to say.
We did get a great question asking about what's the benefit of research? Why should it even be something that we're talking about or thinking about as a part of the student experience? We're going to hear a little bit from Erika about that.
Wow. Okay. So the benefits of research are, I could talk about that probably all day. So to me, I think what a huge benefit of research was, I actually didn't come to Pitt originally to do research. And now research is actually a pretty big part of my internship. So it's a little bit outside of Pitt, but I found out about about the internship like through my pre-law organization, which is of course like from being on campus and just like having that access to different opportunities through that. So in terms of research, I mean, when people first think of research, of course, they think about like medical field and things like that. So, I mean, Pitt is just objectively one of like the biggest schools for research, from the polio vaccine to a potential COVID-19 vaccine. I mean, it's some of the most innovative stuff that's ever happened in the United States, let alone the world. And also with like being the, it's called the school that had one of the first transplants and things like that, like having that access to research at Pitt opens the way for you to go into higher degrees. So like I have a lot of friends that maybe if they're like on like a medical tracks, like maybe majoring in bio and things, they don't necessarily want to be pre-med. A lot of them do want to go into research. So having research in the undergrad field, I think is super helpful just to like give you some sort of leverage, I would say, in order to do like a PhD program. Or if you also just, most of our professors here are involved in research in some capacity. So if you wanted to like have a closer connection with professors and learn about like why not only did they do research, but why they love to do research, getting involved in that, just like having like hands-on experience with someone who's been doing research for many years in a field is just super helpful to get more engaged with the world, get more engaged with your campus. Again, Pitt really does emphasize research a lot. And no matter what your major is, again, I'm not something that's part of the medical field at all, but I was still able to have opportunities to, in my opinion, of course, some of the coolest research that I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I had gone to school somewhere else.
Great, thank you. So we got a great question about what's the first experience like when you're first year on campus? What is research like? Is it something you can get involved in? How easy is it? And we're going to hear a little bit from Vanchika a little bit about what that experience is like.
So getting involved in research is like really, really easy. Well, especially as a freshman, they have this program called First Year Experience in Research, where you basically just like fill out a short form and then they'll try to like match you with research that they think you're going to be interested in. I know a lot of my friends found their research that way. For me, I wanted to have like more control over like what I was choosing. So I just like went on to like Scape Hall, which is the University of Pittsburgh's medical student website. And on one of the tabs was just like their research options. And I just went and like emailed like 5 different like lab directors. And the lab directors usually take like a week to respond. And once they respond, I just like interviewed with a couple people. And I found that I really liked the research that this one lab was doing on like Huntington. So I just kind of joined that lab, and it was like really, really simple. I know other than like just emailing people, a great way to do it is AMSA has a research fair where basically like all these different researchers come into this like one area, and you just like kind of hand out your information and resume to all of them, and they'll actually reach out to you, which is also something that's like really helpful if you don't want to like spend your time like going through and finding every single lab.
Great, thank you. So we got a question that was about, is a capstone required for every single major? And the answer is no. It really is depending on what you are studying and what your major is, of course, what school you are in. That will be something that dictates whether or not a capstone or a research project is required, because every major does have their own requirements, where you'll find some may culminate in a capstone-like project where you are doing some heavy research on something, whereas something could be entirely different. It could be a professionally related experience where you're out in the business world conducting something in that sphere. We heard from a couple of our students talking about, as a part of their Bachelor of Philosophy or one of the degree options through our honors program, where you can work on a capstone, which is really an enormous research project. So it does just kind of depend on what major or area you are studying in. Next, we had a question about UPMC. If you're not familiar, that's the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. It is a truly fantastic resource that we have on our campus, and we are so fortunate to have it. We're going to hear a little bit now from Natalie about what students can utilize through UPMC.
So there's a ton of opportunities through UPMC. What's really fantastic starting out just about the hospitals themselves and the research facilities themselves is we have 3 of them that are just under a mile away from all of our classes. So they're in the Oakland neighborhood. And then of course we have a ton that are actually all around the world. So whether you're right, at class, you could have research facilities that are directly next to your class, right next door could be a research lab, or you could be, abroad and have those opportunities as well. So coming from me, I did study social sciences. So I wasn't, neuroscience or biology or chemistry, but I had so many friends who are and were and who did use those research opportunities. One of my roommates actually, she did research for UPMC just at one of their facilities right down Forbes Avenue or Fifth Avenue. She actually worked in a monkey lab, which was a really fantastic opportunity for her. She loved it. She ended up doing it sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. And that's something that, graduate students don't even get the opportunity to do. And she got to do that as an undergraduate. So as far as things like competition or, how difficult is it to get those opportunities, I would not worry about that at all. There's so many opportunities to really use any of those resources. And, if you're a nursing student, you can do research in any of those hospitals because you're doing clinical hours there. Really just having those hospitals right there and them being a facet of, opportunities as a Pitt student will really pay off. And so I wouldn't stress pretty much at all about getting those opportunities or having the ability to be one of those students who's chosen to do research at any of those UPMC facilities.
Great, thank you, Natalie. And we had a question about length. How much time do you have to devote to a research project? Is something you're going to work on for a semester, for a few weeks, for a full year? So we're going to hear a little bit from Rupa about what that looks like on campus.
So it really does depend on what the student wants to do. So if you're, looking at the capstone side of things, for example, in the neuroscience department, the capstone requirement is 4 credits. And you can kind of basically break that up any way you would like. So I am actually doing this semester 4 credits alone. Obviously, I met the capstone requirement a little while ago, and I'm still doing research because I love it and I choose to do it. But you can break it up any way you'd like. So you could do it at least like 1 credit every semester, or you can do 2 credits per semester. You can kind of break it up. If you're in a different major, then obviously it depends on what that capstone requirement is, or if there even is one. And at that point, as I said, it really does depend on what the student is interested in.
Excellent. So we did get a specific question talking more about what does research look like for someone that might be studying engineering or computer or information sciences. We're going to hear a little bit from Erika now about what that can look like on campus.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a legal studies major. So I obviously haven't had firsthand like physical experience with research when it comes to engineering or computer science. But I do have a lot of friends that have been involved in that. So I have one friend that was involved in some bioengineering research. So they did two different types of research. They did one right across from UPMC Presbyterian. So at just like a smaller facility. So it was technically like considered off campus, but directly adjacent to our campus. I know they were doing prosthetics research. So to my knowledge, they got that simply from going to their professors and asking if they knew of any other professors that were looking to do more research. And that one of those professors in the bioengineering department happened to do research basically right on campus, just at like their own facility that was like, again, right directly adjacent to campus. I also know that they did, I can't speak, that they did research in Bakery Square, which is in East Liberty. I'm not sure if any of you guys are, if you're not from Pittsburgh, it's one of the neighborhoods that are pretty close to our campus. So there is a whole research center right in Bakery Square, specifically for prosthetics. So they were able, like my friend was able to have experience doing prosthetics research right there. And which is great because that's exactly what they wanted to go into. Like they were majoring in bioengineering simply to go into more research regarding prosthetics. So the fact that they were able to have that undergrad experience and be able to just take a quick bus ride, about 10-minute bus ride to another facility, that they were able to do that while also being able to use their Pitt connections was something that I know they didn't take for granted.
Great. And a great question that we got was asking about how does someone even start the research process? How do you start developing those crucial skills that are so useful during a research project? And we're going to hear now from Vanchika about that.
I think for developing skills for research, like the main thing is have to have like really good reading and writing skills, because all research starts out with you having to like read articles and understand what's happening in the lab. And for that, the biggest thing to do is like have experience like reading past articles and being able to like talk to other students about what you're understanding, what you're not. And I think even like wet lab skills, the biggest part about wet lab skills is like understanding procedure. And all of this really comes down to like communication that I found in like my experiences, especially when I did like clinical research over the summer, last summer. The biggest thing that the lab director like wanted all of us to do is to like be able to like read articles and present the articles. And you'll find that in a lot of your research labs, that the lab directors will often want you to like be able to present on the topic to like the postdocs, because they want to make sure that you understand the topic. So I think like the important skill that people need to develop for research is being able to like communicate with your peers, communicate with your lab directors, and like really get a good understanding of how to read articles and how to be able to present the topics that you learn about.
Great. So, of course, this session today is all about research, and we are talking about all its benefits and all the amazing things that you can do on campus. But a great question that we got is, does everyone have to do research? Or who are the students that are doing research on campus? Is it a requirement? And we're going to hear more from Natalie now about that.
So no, everybody does not have to do research. When I went to college, it was not something that I thought I was ever going to do, particularly because I was not in the health field. So I thought that research was really only for people that were in the sciences. And it was not, like I said, it just wasn't something that I thought I was going to do. And then I had so many friends. And of course, the University of Pittsburgh is just massive in research. So you would be hard pressed to make it through, any class without having somebody mention it or without having friends that are involved with it. And it really opened my eyes. So it was something that I figured would be beneficial to look into. And for me, it actually ended up being really fantastic just because I'm going to law school and I would love to focus in civil rights litigation. And I actually got to do research that focused on the difference between human relations commissions and civil rights commissions and kind of how those developed. And so it was something really beneficial. And a big reason a lot of people do it is because, of course, it's something you get to put on your resume, and it's something, oftentimes people will get published, or they will have the opportunity to work very closely with a very esteemed professor or a research facilitator, and just making connections and networking in that way is really beneficial. But it's not something that you have to do unless it's required of your particular undergraduate major, or for example, if you're going to graduate school and that's something that they would look at.
All right, so our next question has to do with funding for research. Who pays for all of these fantastic experience? How does Pitt help you out? How does that process work? And I'll just talk briefly about some of the different ways that students can find research and some of how that funding can work. So specifically through something like our Honors College, the Pitt Honors program, that is somewhere where students can work with their academic advisors to find opportunities for, whether it's a project on their own to receive funding for, or something larger where they want to be involved in a group that's doing research. Funding is available through lots and lots of different external sources. We're going to hear a little bit from Erika now about what funding looks like on her research experience.
Yeah, so my research is a tad different, only because my research, even though I found out about it through Pitt and through being like involved on campus, it is technically an outside organization. So my nonprofit focuses heavily on, similar to what Natalie was talking about, but actually what she wants to do in terms of like civil rights litigation and things like that. So we work really heavily with a bunch of other nonprofits. And again, just the way nonprofits work is that we rely a lot on our outside funding from other organizations too. So because of that, what we have to do is publish research in which that research can then like help other companies and other outside funding sources be like, hey, like we did X, Y, and Z, and we found out X, Y, and Z, but with funding, of course, like we'd be able to do even more with that. So I do work with a nonprofit that does a lot of like civil rights and criminal justice reform work, which happens like directly in Pittsburgh. So I go to downtown a lot, to the courthouse, helping my bosses with a bunch of different clients and things like that. So we do focus on like the civil rights part of that. And because of that, it is a very underlooked field. So we are currently doing research just in terms of like some statistics regarding the city of Pittsburgh as total, as well as different rates involving like anything that you could think of that would have to do with civil rights. So it's a very, very broad field. I could talk about it all day. But basically with like where we get the funding from is from outside sources and different donors. So basically once we publish that research for the public, anybody, whether it be a single person donor, whether it be a company like the ACLU, things like that, they're usually the ones that help fund us from that. So that's just from my like outside of Pitt research experience.
Great. So up next, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens over the summer on campus. Are there research opportunities that are available? And also, we got a great question about how do professors figure into all of this? Are they helping students? Is anyone able to do research with professors? So we're going to hear from Roop now on both of those topics.
So summer, I actually stayed last summer. I stayed on my own just because I decided to, take classes. So on the side, I was also doing research with the same professor that I've been doing research with since the very beginning. But there are many other different options for the summer. For example, there is the Chancellor's Undergraduate Research Fellowship that students can apply into. And I'm not exactly sure the price. I think it's about $5,000, but don't quote me on it. And you can actually find that information on the Pitt website. Basically, you apply right into this fellowship program, program, and to see whether or not you can get the scholarship to do research over the summer. Otherwise, there are other programs such as 12-week sessions where students, get paid to work in a lab. I actually had a friend last summer who stayed the summer and actually got housing as well because he was working in a lab through the full 12-week session in the summer. And so that's a little bit about summer. Working with the professor. So my professor isn't with the undergraduate school. He's actually with the medical school. So he does teach classes, but he only teaches classes about 1 or 2 hours a day. And I kind of work around his schedule and he works around my schedule. But it's kind of a really great opportunity to get to, work under a professor, because if I ever have, any schoolwork questions or anything like that, I can kind of go to him as well. Any, career questions, I go to him. He's a really great resource for me. One of the main reasons why I actually ended up coming to Pitt was to do research, and I am, pre-med. So getting this opportunity to work with someone who, works with at the medical school has been one of the greatest opportunities that I've ever had here at the University of Pittsburgh.
Great. So continuing on this trend of sort of outside of the normal opportunities for students as far as those being in the summer, now we're going to take it one step further and talk about those experiences that are available to students abroad. So totally away from Pittsburgh. And we're going to hear a little bit from Vanchika now about study abroad research opportunities.
So last summer, I actually did a research abroad in Portugal, and it was really easy to get involved in because Pitt actually has internship programs abroad in every single major. And a lot of these internships have to do with either like shadowing programs or research, and it's like up to you to choose. So the research that I was able to do abroad was just clinical research, and it was planned and everything was taken care of by Pitt. So it's like really easy to do study abroad research if that's something you're interested in. Also, if you're doing research abroad, you can also take classes abroad as well, like combine them together. So it makes it like really easy, especially in the summer when you have that time off and you're just looking for some ways to get involved, but maybe not stay in Pittsburgh.
All right, and a very important question that we received is, of course, what are some of the requirements for research? Are there certain GPAs that you have to maintain, courses, or anything like that? And we're going to hear a little bit now from Natalie about those requirements.
So because there are so many different kinds of research, as you've all been hearing throughout everything that we've been saying today, there's a bunch of different opportunities or sort of requirements per whatever research you're doing. So if you're doing research that's with a lab, you might have to have a particular GPA requirement to do research with that lab. Typically it's like a 2.0 to be able to engage in that research. But if you're doing research with a professor, say the way that I did my research, which was I did it with a professor, it was deemed independent, as it was just he and I that were doing research. It was part of his research that he's doing for the university. And I was just a research assistant to him specifically. There wasn't a GPA requirement for myself, but I did have to maintain, good standing within the university to engage in that research, which again is typically a 2.0 or above. And oftentimes for research, if you're looking at credits or sort of where that factors into your GPA, it'll be done on a satisfactory or no credit sort of scale, which just means if you do the research and you do it to whatever standard you and that professor had agreed upon prior, you get satisfactory, and that goes on your transcript as being you passed that research, or you get no credit, which means you would not have passed and gotten credit for that research. So that's pretty much how it works with GPA. And for first year experiences in research, as far as classes go that you might have to take for that research, you do enroll in a class that is specifically for that first year experience in research. But again, the way I did it with independent research, I did not have to enroll in any specific class for that.
Great, and I want to thank everyone for all of their questions so far. These have been fantastic and really helpful as we guide our session, but just want to remind everyone that you can ask us questions utilizing the chat on YouTube. You're also welcome to text in questions on visit days, because that is our job today, to make sure every single person leaves with all of their questions answered. Now we're going to take one talking about how does a student balance all of these great experiences? How do they make time to go to class? How do they make time to study, relax, hang out with their friends, and of course, add research into the mix? We're going to hear from a few of our students all about that. We're going to start with Erika.
Yeah, so just like I think what a common issue for a lot of college students is, especially as a freshman, is time balance just in general, like whether you are doing research or something else, whatever the case might be. So I got involved in research a little bit later. So only within the last year or so, which is, and since I'm a junior, that's considered probably a little later than when a lot of students start to do research, not all the time, but just an example of it. So for me, I actually helped pioneer the research that I'm doing right now. So my boss kind of reached out to me. It was part of my internship, so I'd already done some work for her, just internship wise. And then once I had been doing that internship for about like a semester and a half or so, she had asked me if I wanted to help pioneer some research with her. And I said, well, I would love to, but my issue is that like I do 20 million other things on campus, and I need to make sure that like I'm like balancing my time okay. And she's like, well, I will give you the flexibility to be able to like help make your own schedule, and I will help work with you on that. So I was very fortunate in that. So I was actually able to make my own schedule in terms of research. So there are some days like in my schedule that maybe I had like a couple hours in between like one class and another, or if I didn't have class till later, and I would come in the morning and help it with research in that regard. So, and because my research was mostly headed downtown, it was very convenient for me to hop on the bus from campus, take about a 10-15 minute bus ride downtown, do what I had to do for a couple hours, once or twice a week, and be able to do a lot of research from home as well. I was just fortunate and to be able to do that. So I personally was able to do a lot on my own time. I'm not sure if anybody else had that same experience, but.
We'll also hear a little bit now from Roop about what her day looks like.
All right, for me, also, I kind of had the flexibility to choose, but obviously I work in a lab, so I have to go in during, the normal 9 to 5 work hours. So I kind of had to work a little bit around that schedule, as well as, like I said, my professors, hours that he teaches. Luckily, he teaches later on in the evenings, so I don't have to worry too much about the hours that he works with. I usually, I wake up, I'm a morning riser, so I tend to, wake up a little earlier. I'll go to research from about 9 to like 12, maybe 1, depending on the day, depending on my classes. And then from there, I'll do my classes usually in the afternoon or late at night. I kind of learned my way after being involved in research for a few semesters. So my very first semester when I was involved, I was only involved for 2 credits. So that was about 10 hours a week. So I only went in about maybe 2-3 hours a day. And I went in, I think, around 11 to 1 between my classes as well. The second semester I was involved with it, I got a little bit more involved, started doing it for 3 credits. Just like I said, these past 2 semesters, I've been doing it for 4 credits, obviously a lot more involved, but also I've learned how to manage my time, which most students do once, they're juniors and here at Pitt. So that's kind of how my day looks and how my past semesters have looked. Obviously, it's a little bit different for everyone and when they like to study, when they like to wake up, or what their research professors or, research bosses prefer. But that was for me.
All right, great. So thank you again for the extra questions we're getting now. We have lots of good ones to get through now. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the process of getting involved in research once you're on campus. What does that first year look like? Is it something you can do right away? Is it something you have to wait till you have a certain experience? So we're going to hear a little bit now from Vanchika about that.
You definitely don't have to wait to get involved in research at all. As soon as you get onto campus, there's plenty of opportunities for people to get into research. I think even first semester, like my first semester, like literally the second or third weekend, they had a career fair in the William Pitt Union, and the career fair involved research opportunities and internship opportunities for all majors. Also, like every semester, they do internship fairs and career fairs and research fairs specific to every single major. So as long as you know what kind of research you want to get involved in, it's very easy to get involved. If you want to like have more one-on-one seeking people out, you can also just email a bunch of people, and you can do this literally as early as freshman year, like first semester. Like there's no like strict timeline that you have to follow. I know people who started doing research like their junior year, and they were able to like go into like higher education, like grad school and med school with no problems. And I also know people who started doing research like literally the summer before they got into Pitt, because as soon as they got admitted, they knew that they wanted to do research. So they literally applied for research like before they even got to Pitt, like got housing there for the summer and started doing research then. So it's like never too early to start, but you don't have to like feel pressured to start early either. It's just like whatever pace you want to take it at. And there's as many opportunities as you'd want there to be.
All right, so I know we've had a lot of people join us since we started this session. So we're actually going to take a quick break right now, and we're going to have our panelists just reintroduce themselves quickly, talk briefly about what their research looks like on campus, and a little bit about how they got started. And we're going to hear first from Erika.
Hi guys, so I'm Erika. I'm a junior at Pitt majoring in legal studies. So my research is with a nonprofit that I helped pioneer through the University of Pittsburgh. So we are doing criminal justice reform work, which is kind of like what the organization in general does. So I do a lot of work downtown at the Allegheny County Courthouse, and we basically sit in with different trials, different hearings, and things like that. And we take a look at a bunch of different things. So we look at the demographics of those accused. We look at demographics of judges, of everybody in the room. It's very, very observationally based. We are still kind of doing the first part of it in terms of just trying to like get all the information out there, and then we're going to like compile the research together and publish it so that grants around the nation for grants from people around the nation. So again, because I'm working for a nonprofit, all the work that we do needs to get funded from some sort of outside source. So basically, I go about twice a week to the courthouse. Again, just 10-15-minute bus ride from campus. And I sit there for a couple hours and hear all different types of cases that go on.
Hi, I'm Natalie Simmons. I'm a senior at Pitt. I have a double major in politics and philosophy and gender, sexuality, women's studies. And the research I did, I actually concluded it my junior year, but it was independent research for the political science department. I was a research assistant for one of the deans of the political science department. And I worked with him on historical research on human rights and human relations commissions, specifically in American cities during about the 1960s, 1970s. And the research itself was concentrated in global political civil rights studies themselves. And basically what that means that I did was I did a lot of emailing, a lot of phone calling, a lot of reading research articles and going through old cities, things like deeds, other sort of paperwork type things, and accumulated a bunch of research to sort of look at the difference between what a human rights commission is and what a human relations commission is, and sort of where cities should be moving toward with regard to which of those two has the most beneficial opportunities for people with regards to civil rights and what is covered under those two things.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ruth. I'm a junior. My major is neuroscience, and my research is also involved with the neuroscience department. I'm actually with UPMC in one of their many neurodegenerative labs. We are studying Parkinson's disease, and my research is a little bit complicated. It actually took me a little while to kind of understand the scientific mechanism that goes behind everything in the pathology of Parkinson's disease. I actually have started from the very beginning of, tending rats. We work with rats, and then from there, we'll work with tissues, cells, and run different types of protocols such as approximation ligation assays, and many other different types of protocols that are in the lab. Obviously, it took me a little while to kind of get involved because it was basically a very different language and a very different I was just not involved with anything like it before in my life. So it took me a little while to kind of transition to learn all these protocols and get involved. And once I did, I've loved it ever since.
Hi guys, I'm Vanshika. I'm a sophomore at Pitt. I've actually I did a different research my freshman year than the research I'm doing now. Freshman year, the research that I did was on Huntington's and trying to use melatonin as a possible treatment for Huntington's. So when I did research there, most of the stuff that we worked on was like cell culture and growing like neuronal cells to see how Huntington's would form in it and how melatonin would work as a treatment method. So a lot of that involved more like tissue culture and cell culture. The research I do now is creating rat models that can basically transplant the human immune system into the rat and mice so that you can look at infectious diseases in rodents without and infect them without having to like worry about like human protocols and all of that. So for that, a lot of what we do is like animal culture. So we have like an animal lab in next to our research building in Pittsburgh itself that we just go and do surgery on the rats to implant the human immune system into. And a lot more of what we're doing rather than finding treatment is to actually be able to like look at the mechanism of various diseases like HIV and other infectious diseases to be able to possibly find cures in the future.
Great. So now you have met all of our panelists again. We got a question about, and I know many of you now may be involved in this or are thinking about it, doing research now in high school and how that may have translated to an experience at Pitt. So we're actually going to go back to Vanshika and hear a little bit more about her experience from high school moving in to Pitt.
So I actually our high school was very research focused. So I actually started research freshman year of high school and I really liked it. So that's why I wanted to continue doing it in the future too. Sophomore and junior year, I didn't really do like clinical research. I did more like research-based papers and just writing out like articles and stuff. And senior year, I did more wet lab-based research again, and that kind of transitioned into the research I wanted to do in college as well, because a lot of the research that I did in high school was cell culture and looking at tissues and being able to look at cancer cells and see their progress over different time periods and different nutrition conditions. So that kind of gave me the skills to do the research for research in college, like cell culture and tissue culture research in college. So that was kind of my experience, like transferring high school research to college research. Again, it's not necessary to do research in high school in order to start your college research. But if you do research in high school, it does kind of give you some skills that you can transfer on as well.
All right, great. So we are just about at the end of our session today, talking all about research at Pitt. And we're going to have our panelists now go around one more time. And we're going to hear from them what is their favorite experience of research and that single best day they had doing it. And I actually forgot at the very beginning of this to really introduce myself and talk about my own experience. And I just want to mention real quick, as I mentioned before, my name's Nick. But I went to Pitt, graduated in 2014, and I got to be involved in some amazing research experiences during my time. We talked a little bit about that first experience in research program. You may have seen it on our websites. When I was a first-year student at Pitt, I got to be a part of a neurosurgery team over at the Presbyterian Hospital, which is right on campus. And as a part of that, I got to watch brain surgeries, and the entire experience was absolutely fascinating and changed my entire course of study as a student. And that was definitely my best experience. We're going to hear now from the students about what their time was like, and we are going to start with Natalie.
Okay, so my best day in research, I didn't have a specific day. I really loved, when I would get responses from the people that I reached out toward from other universities. That was really fantastic because I really got to engage with people who were at the forefront of civil rights and sort of different advocates from all over different places in the country and actually from around the world as well. So that was really fantastic for me, just hearing what's going on at those front lines of advocacy, because that's something that I'm looking to pursue in my own life. So that was really awesome, just really the little moments. But specifically at the end of my research, I did research for a full year. So I did it a spring semester, a summer, and then a fall semester. So when I got to really accumulate everything and make this really, really big document sort of with everything that I had founded and all of the different things that we were sort of looking toward and where the research was going toward. That was basically my favorite part, was to see all of that work and how it accumulated to be this fantastic thing that can really help people. And I know that that's something that I could not have done if I wouldn't have done it in the political science department at Pitt. So I'm really thankful for that.
Sorry. So my major, my major is legal studies, which I know sounds like it'd be similar to political science. But for those of you guys that don't know, Pitt also has something called the College of General Studies, which is something separate from arts and sciences. So it's a program that you don't necessarily apply to when you first become a student at Pitt. But after a single semester here, as long as you maintain a solid GPA, you're able to transfer into this school. So it's a very specialized school, normally focuses on like non-traditional students. So usually people that are older that might be coming back for another degree or anything like that. Even though I am a traditional student, I still had obviously amazing opportunities through the school. One of them was, of course, like being able to just still be able to do this research even with the specialized program. So I would say my favorite day of research was not too long before spring break, actually. I was downtown. I've been following like this one court case for a really long time. It was actually a very high profile case in which me and my boss got to talk a lot to the defense attorneys. And they ended up like knowing our names. We knew their names. And it was just a very, very high profile case. So we weren't able to share much with people. Other people couldn't share much, like unless you were in the courtroom, you didn't really know what was going on. But we were there when the guy who was ended up being wrongly accused was found not guilty. And I remember the defense attorney came up to my boss and I afterwards and said, "Thank you for like," which we were so confused, like as like why he would come to us of all people. But he was like, "Thank you for the work that you do. Like the research that you're going to publish is going to help people like my client." And just like getting that like validation, like as like a 20-year-old girl that was just working for this nonprofit, and the fact that this high-end lawyer now knew my name and maybe I had another connection if I chose to stay on that route, was just like such an amazing opportunity for me. And I'm sure since we're Pathfinders, a lot of people probably have this experience, but as Pathfinders, just being able to know that like part of like what we do makes an impact on other people, and just like being able to hear things from people that you might have not expected to have those words of encouragement from was something that I will never take for granted.
All right, for me, one of the main reasons why, I packed my bag and went all the way across the country to go to Pitt was because of Pitt's opportunities for research. I really wanted to get involved in neurodegenerative research because it means a lot to me. Growing up, it was on my big career list. And I think if I ended up choosing any other, school, I would not have had the opportunities that I've had here at our university. And, I can already say I've already checked something off my big, long career list because of this opportunity to, work and get to study Parkinson's disease. So for me, my favorite day was probably, it took me my whole one semester and a whole summer semester before I got to run my very first experiment. But the first day that I got to run my experiment, I was really, really nervous. I was working with cells and I ran the protocol. And then the next day I came back to, view it under the microscope to see how, the results of it. And it actually worked. My experiment had worked and I'd never seen my professor. So, he was really, really proud of me. And it was my favorite day because I felt like, after putting in all that work for so long, something finally paid off. So that was my favorite day in research.
I think the reason I wanted to get involved in Pitt research was because I heard about how collaborative of an environment it was. And I wanted to get involved in research with people who are also interested in research. And in my lab, there's a lot of seniors who are really interested in research, and we became really, really close. And I think my favorite day of research was I think it was just a couple of weeks before spring break. So before we knew it'd be the last time we saw each other. We had this protocol that was 8 hours long, and it was just me and these two other seniors. And I remember going in at 8 a.m. and just staying there doing the procedure, talking with them, just talking about our research, just talking about our life in general. And just staying there for, I think, from 8 a.m. in the morning to like 6 in the afternoon, 6 in the evening, just doing research, looking at our results and being able to like do the blood processing that we were doing. And I think that was my favorite day of research because it really showed like more than just the science, that it's really all comes down to like having that collaborative effort between people and making that connections, because at the end of the day, like that's what really made research worth it for me, like being able to do something that'll help others.
Well, that was truly fantastic, and I couldn't think of a better way to end our session today. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you learned something and enjoyed learning all about research. We have lots and lots of more sessions happening the rest of this week and next week as well. Please keep checking on our website to see what is upcoming, and of course, to learn all about the fantastic opportunities at Pitt. So once again, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hail to Pitt.